raised its ugly head in the country quite recently. It's a reminder that it and racism are still very much alive. Today, Justice Minister Ronald Lamola will speak on this issue. He is addressing the 20th anniversary of the Third World Conference Against Racism and Xenophobia. Our reporter Govan Whittles is there, joins us live now with those details. Govan, good to have you. Good morning to you, colleague. Let's talk about this particular event and the significance of it, especially with the Minister Ronald Lamola there. We know that oftentimes, South Africa has been accused of being xenophobic. However, I suppose we're here at this event to address some of those issues.
Yes, we are. And the Third World Conference Against Racism and Xenophobia was held in 2001 in South Africa. They're commemorating the 20th anniversary here at Empress Palace in Kempton Park. And one of the main takeaways from that conference was the development of a national action plan to fight racism and xenophobia. That's exactly what we're expecting to hear from the Justice Minister Ronald Lamola when he delivers the keynote address at day one of today's conference. And of course, his address comes at a time where we're expecting him to touch on some of the more thorny issues, such as incidents of racism at Stellenbosch, as well as the continued mobilization along apparent xenophobic lines, and what would appear to be a drift towards more narrow politics in South Africa's political landscape. So there is a lot to discuss, and in terms of the Justice Minister's contribution, we're expecting him to focus on what kind of legislative instruments are in place that could help combat racism. We know that racism itself has been criminalized, and you could now get a jail sentence for being a racist. But whether the government has anything in mind for displays of xenophobia is not clear, and we're hoping to get some idea from the Justice Minister when he delivers that address. A number of other organizations also taking part in this conference, among them the Nelson Mandela Foundation, as well as a number of research groups from different universities. So we are expecting to hear some of the outcomes of the research done into patterns of xenophobia across the country, and perhaps some analysis on the controversial Operation Dudula and its effects on the society at large. That address by Ronald Lamola expected closer to 11 o'clock, but between then we'll get some of the data in terms of South Africa's, the extent of racism in South Africa and the patterns of xenophobia.
Absolutely. I mean, the minister was just here, last week. Govan also commemorating the 25th anniversary of the Constitution in this country. But obviously, at that time, we were dealing with the Stellenbosch racism row, various incidents coming out there and allegations of racism from the institution. Even Minister Bladen Zamande warning Stellenbosch University to guard against being almost a racist institution. I mean, can we guess that perhaps the minister will further, add to that and talk about it during this address?
We have seen some condemnation of the apparent racism at Stellenbosch and what's happened there. But what we're expecting to hear from the minister is his view on the parameters currently set in law in terms of punishing racism, and whether that should be extended or whether they're fine as it is. That is the conversation that has emerged following the incident at Stellenbosch. What kind of recourse would be available? And even as the university addresses it, there are still some questions around whether or not they need to tighten the screws on racists in terms of the law, and whether they need to introduce similar laws to deal with people who may incite violence towards foreign nationals and further stoke xenophobia.
All right, we'll leave it there, and of course we'll come back to you, colleague, as soon as there are other developments around that particular address by the minister and event. That's Govan Whittles for us this morning out in Kempton Park.